I was ready to end my 10-year relationship. I had my reasons, I had hit my limit, and then he got diagnosed with cancer. And now I'm feeling this mix of when we feel something, it stems back to the belief. When we believe something, it creates a feeling and it becomes this loop that we go through. I'm feeling this. Well, first, the question is, what am I feeling? And what I'm feeling right now is a lot of heaviness, a lot of weight. I feel a lot of words that I want to say, feelings that have been reoccurring, that because they keep going in this loop, I guess because I'm not expressing them, it feels as though like it's I guess this buildup of pressure now that's happening. And so for context, about what are we, almost end of December now? Yep. So almost a month ago, my partner, who we have had infidelity in our past and we're working on rebuilding trust. Well, we really just started working on rebuilding trust recently. And in that discussion of rebuilding trust, we decided that we were going to put some boundaries, some guidelines in place so that things that have happened in our past don't continue to keep happening. And so the things that I asked my partner for were to communicate any unwanted advances, even if he didn't think that, it was something that he needed to communicate. Even if it's ambiguous, I wanted it communicated just so there's that transparency. If someone hit him up who he had a history with from the opposite sex, it is my preference that I'm let know about these things, and that clear guidelines are set in these conversations so that there are no pet names, there are no heart-eyed, kissy face emojis, and if need be, if it comes up, especially because it typically has an opportunity to, for him to say that he's in a committed relationship, he is supposed to voice that to the other person, and then give me a heads up that it was needed to voice that to the other person. So these were some of the guidelines that we set in terms of rebuilding trust. And so one of the things that happened, that prompted this, was someone from his past hit him up, and he, instead of letting me know that he wanted to go meet with them, he made plans to go meet with this person. And at every opportunity to let her know that he was seeing someone, he did not. And there were babies and sugar lumps and all types of nicknames being exchanged that just didn't feel appropriate for someone who is in a relationship. And so I found this out because I looked at his phone and we had a discussion about it. And so the weekend that they were supposed to meet up, he ended up needing to really just kind of take care of his knee. He had a bump on his knee that was getting larger and larger and more painful. And so the weekend that they were supposed to meet up, he took that as an opportunity that weekend to basically, where he normally is here with me and my daughter, and we're hanging out and playing games or just chilling, watching shows during the weekend, he took that opportunity to be home, playing video games, pretty much out of sight and without a lot of communication. He noticed that something was wrong, and he ended up giving me a call when he noticed that something was wrong. And he listed out a bunch of options that he could do. He's like, do you want me to FaceTime you to let you know that I am where I am? Do you want to come over? Do you want me to come there? He listed all of these different options that he could have done to basically help reassure me that he was where he said he was. And then he chose to do none of them. And he also chose not to reach out for the rest of the evening. and then hit me up in the morning. And so this sent me instantly back into the triggered, hurt person of, I really want to believe you're where you say you are, but I can't see you and I don't know. And I feel like I've told myself that I know in the past and I've been wrong. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do a disservice to myself. And so it put me in this place where for something like 36 hours, I was pretty much left to my own devices to try and figure out how to trust this person, even though I couldn't see them, even though I wasn't being reassured that they were there, that they were committed to our relationship. And so we ended up having a discussion about this in particular. And it was noted that he could have done more, but ultimately he didn't really understand why I got so upset because he wasn't doing anything. And that hurt deeply simply because in the past, he's tried to go above and beyond to let me know that he's here, to let me know. And this time, I had expectations that weren't met. And despite that, I decided to get over my feelings because at the end of the day, he wasn't doing anything. He decided to just do him. And so in that process of getting over myself and trying to figure out how to move forward without harboring any feelings that it felt like I was left to deal with what I was dealing with alone, we just kind of were navigating along for a couple of weeks. Because what is it? It's the 18th right now. Yeah. So it was like that, 1st of December, we talked about it because he came that Sunday. And then we went on that first week, 4th, 5th, and 6th. And then the following week, last week, he calls me and he lets me know that he has cancer. He has lymphoma. The bump on his leg that was rapidly growing larger and larger was biopsied and it came back as lymphoma. And so appointments got scheduled for this week, Monday, for oncology, the surgeon, because we're dealing with two things. We're dealing with the lump on his leg that either has to be removed surgically and then grafted, or the recovery process that comes with having removed that much mass from his leg, as not to, have a deformity, or they have to go the route of radiation to shrink it down. And that's determination of whether it has to be operated on or radiation all comes down to the results of his CT PET scans results, because they did a scan of his leg to see how deep the mass went, to see how much they were going to have to cut out, and then they did a full body CT or PET scan today with contrast so that they could see any other areas that the cancer had spread. And so even more so, I got the call on that Thursday, and normally my partner picks up our daughter on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and then she comes home with me Friday night. We don't live together. And so I had to pick her up on Thursday. I picked her up on Friday from the bus stop because he was in pain. And so when we got the news, in human design, in my south node, I have the gate 27, which is the gate of nurturing and caring, and especially for the young, the sick, the old, and the weak. And I think it was this kind of energy that took over because he was in pain, he was dealing with things. Our daughter still needed to be taken care of, so naturally, even though it wasn't the norm, I stepped up. Even when it came to him, his mom took him to his morning appointment to see the surgeon, but then the oncologist and the CT scan that he had on Monday, I took him to both of those. One was at like 1 in the afternoon, the other one was like 10 o'clock at night. And then today I drove him to his scans. And so this kind of natural caregiver started to kick in. And what I think I'm feeling now is just a little jolted, simply because I was in a hurt space. And then because of circumstances outside of my control, I had to put my hurt, my feelings aside to deal and help. And there's nothing wrong with that. As a matter of fact, I feel like that's what a lot of people would do. However, what does become a problem is if I don't deal with or address the feelings. Because now I'm in a situation where, because I have stepped up in these different ways, and in having to rearrange my schedule, I have to let people know what's going on. Like, these appointments popped up, and my time is not the way that I thought it was going to be, and here's why. And so now I am getting what feels as best described as sympathy or compassion, and that's understandable too. But because I have these feelings, I was ready to call it quits. They say all the time that, a relationship without trust is like a car without gas. It's not going anywhere. And for 10 years, especially 9, I'd say especially 9, we've been working at it this last year, but especially for the past 9 years, it's just been thing after thing after thing that, or should I say straw after straw after straw, application to the camel's back. And it had gotten to the point where I was at an emotional peak and I was done. But I don't know. And that's, I think, what else is here too. Because when I decided to get over my feelings before we found out the diagnosis, there was this part of me that was questioning whether or not I deserved better. And it's one of those things where now conditioning says you can't leave someone that you love when you're sick. And I'm not saying that that's what I want to do. What I'm simply noticing is that I need to process these feelings. I need to process the hurt. I need to process still the betrayal of the secret plans being made. I need to process there might be a layer of guilt. I need to process the layer of guilt around, I was almost going to leave, and what if this had happened if I left? Who would be there? So letting go and processing that, but really just acknowledging that it's okay for me to have all of these feelings, even if they're conflicting. Because what we know from our emotions is that a lot of them are based on our past experiences. A lot of our emotions are stemming from beliefs. It's this loop, because we have a thought, We think it over and over and over and over and over again, or we have a fear that causes a thought that we think over and over and over again. And before we know it, that thought becomes a belief, something that we're holding to us, that we're checking in with. And what we believe changes how we feel. And so when we feel something, it stems back to the belief. When we believe something, it creates a feeling, and it becomes this loop that we go through. And what I am loving right now is that in talking this out, I'm realizing that it's okay. And really, I just needed to say it. I just needed to say that I was that hurt person. I just needed to say that it was a little unfair, that I had to even more so get over myself because of these things that happened. And it's been one of those things where I see the silver lining in all of this. My partner suffered from, or suffers from, anxiety and depression. And for so long, I've heard him talk about not wanting to be here on this planet anymore. And now that he has cancer, he's realizing that he has fight. He has the want to. He has the passion to. And that's a beautiful thing. Because whereas his mind still brings him those inner critic thoughts, those anxious thoughts, all of those things, because he now has that spark again, he is acknowledging that those pieces of himself, and he's doing what I do and choosing to say, thank you for the warning. This is what I desire. This is what I believe. This is the direction that I want to go in instead. And that is great. It's also made me super grateful for the fact that I am an entrepreneur. And a while ago, I had decided that I wanted more spaciousness in my schedule. And so because I created that for myself, I have the ability to move things around a little bit if need be, to get him where he needs to be, because I have that wiggle room, that flexibility. And it also has confirmed for me that knowing yourself, understanding yourself, not being stuck under the labels and the person people told you that you were, the person you learned to be, uncovering that, unpacking that is even more important. Because when we are out of alignment with our energy, when we're going against the way that we're designed, we have things show up in our bodies, dis-ease, pain. And I think that, especially with gene keys, we know genes are triggered by, gene keys and epigenetics. You can have the gene for something and never have it. And so while he may have had this gene for lymphoma, he could have gone his whole life without ever really having to experience the flare up or the trigger that activated it, that caused it to become and multiply and turn into cancer. He could have the gene, but it never had to activate. If he was living in alignment, if he wasn't so depressed, if he wasn't so anxious, if he was doing the thing that he's doing now and choosing, right? Nothing changed except the circumstance. Nothing changed except his perspective. He could have been choosing to do and see the positive, see the silver lining in things before. But the circumstances are such that it showed him. And so that's why I think that people understanding the way they're designed, the way that they're meant to use their gifts, the way that they are here to fulfill their purpose is so important, because so many of us are walking around and we're sleepwalking. So many of us are frustrated and disappointed and bitter and angry because things that we've listened to, things that we subscribe to from our friends, from our family, from society, were designed differently. And this whole situation has showed me just what alignment can do. And so I feel better. And that gives me hope that the things that we're most scared to share, the things that we think that we might be judged for, these are the things to really say, why not? Because maybe the way that I'm feeling and feeling better after sharing, maybe that helps someone who's going through a same or similar situation, a difficult situation where lots of complex feelings are involved, and maybe they need to hear it from someone who's going through complexities of their own. Say, hey, it's okay to feel the full spectrum, the full range of what you're feeling. Both things can be true. So, thank you for listening. And if you have had any sort of ahas in listening to this, I, of course, would love to hear about them in the comments below. Until next time.